Video we will introduce you to our compliance management course. Now, before you go too much into the training in itself, it's worth remembering that this compliance functionality in Aramba will help you with demonstrating compliance with any kind of standard, framework, contract, legislation. It doesn't really matter what the origin is, if it's a cybersecurity, if it's quality, financial. It doesn't really matter. It really applies to anything. It will help you to demonstrate compliance to people within your organization and also to outsiders like external auditors. So we will again discuss this in a lot more detail throughout the training. Just is worth reminding you at this stage that the compliance module in Aramba can deal with pretty much any kind of compliance. The training is long. You should be looking at around 4 to 5 hours of videos. If you don't want to hear my voice all the time, I would probably agree with you. You can use the subtitles. There's in different languages. You can select the language as well. The training will walk you through different episodes. Now, the idea is that you complete all episodes. You should not skip any of them because they are very interrelated to each other. So if you miss one episode, it will be difficult to guess what the next one is saying. Now, these episodes will cover all topics involved with compliance management, problems and solutions, very, very important. It explains the basics of Aramba. You really need to understand this. The compliance management introduction is very good if you're just trying to understand what this thing does and how it does it more or less in a very high level. If you decide that Aramba is for you and the compliance stuff might be a good functionality for your needs, we then move into teaching you how to use the user interface of Aramba. Basic access permissions, we teach you the concepts of how to create accounts and how to manage access permissions and so on. And we already set up some stuff in your Aramba implementation. So you should have an Aramba up and running when you watch this video, because you will have to do some things. Policy and controls. Now, you really, really need to pay a lot of attention to these two courses. They're very, very detailed on how these functionalities work. They're very important in Aramba, and you really need to understand. In particular, pay attention to the typical questions. At some points, it might get a bit too long, the explanation, but it's long because it's very important that you understand it well. Projects and exceptions, and again, here we will explain to you what the modules do. Pretty much in the same way as with the policies and controls. You will create a dummy item, you will create filters, notifications, you will do different things. These two you can skip if you want. In fact, it's free, external audit findings, the 3 of them. What I will do is I will watch right up unto the introduction of the project exception and findings module, which is at the beginning of the video. And then if you want to cut some corners, these 3 are the place to go, nothing else. The rest you really have to cover it. Dynamic statuses is a functionality in Aramba that you use in every module in Aramba. It's very, very important. It's quite complicated, but you should really understand how it works. CSV imports, again, is a common functionality in Aramba. You will use it across all modules. It's very important that you understand how it works. Same goes for reporting. And now when you move into compliance packages, compliance analysis, here's where you start implementing the software again. So you will need your implementation, you will need the installation of Aramba, because you will need to be doing things here and here. The database is basically the place where you can download all the packages we have. So you can download the CSV files, we can upload them to Aramba, and that will include all the regulations and standards and so on. Rollout is at the end of the implementation. That's where you need to think more on the operational side. So how do I keep this thing updated? How do I create accounts to let people come in? And that's what you will see on the rollout. As I explained a little bit when I was walking you through the different modules, in most of these modules, you will learn stuff. You cannot do things until you learn how to do them, at least how to do them right. So in all of them, you will have to learn and then do. In some modules, the do part is a bit limited because you can do so many things, and we can teach you so much in this video. So for example, reporting. We teach you how the reporting functionality works, and we do one small report. But there's endless way of how to do this reporting. So you will need a little bit of creativity on your side to then play around with the tool and define what you want. I wouldn't worry too much about doing all that right until you complete the implementation of the compliance module itself. Same goes for dynamic statuses. There's many ways on how to create them, how to interact with notifications, with APIs and different things. So again, we teach you how the functionality works and we give you some examples, but again, it's really up to you to use your creativity and push the full potential of the tool. So again, every episode will teach you something. Some episodes will ask you to do some stuff. You need to do it when we ask you to do it. And then some episodes will require more time, and we recommend that you look at that later on, more after the rollout phase, for you to explore it and play with it once you get to know the tool well. Throughout the training, we use the enterprise version of Rumba. If you're using community, some of the things we teach you here, you won't be able to do them just because the community version doesn't include those kind of functionalities. So for example, when we're looking at policies, controls, projects, and so on, at some phase we talk about notifications. Notifications are not part of community, so that part, well, you can look what it does and how it works, but you won't be able to do it on your instance. Same goes for reporting or dynamic statuses. Those kind of things cannot really be done on community. The rest pretty much you can do. If you want to know the differences in between community and enterprise, go here to GRC software. If you click, you will see that you get community, enterprise, and there's a table doing the comparison of what you can do with community and what you can do with enterprise, either on-prem or SaaS. So then again, go and look this table, and so you see what differences exist. Aramba is a pretty affordable software. Now, the implementation of Aramba is what you really should be looking at. That is what definitely is going to take you many hours, and that is probably the bulk of the costs actually not in the software, but in the time that you're going to be investing this for many weeks and even years if you're using the tool long term. So what you want to make sure is that you implement the software right from the beginning the right way. And while we do teach you how to do that on the Learning Portal, you might feel more comfortable having someone walk you through all the implementation steps with you. When you purchase Aramba, you have to use this website. You will select the software you want. And then when it comes to the implementation, here are these workshops that we strongly advise you to purchase. So if you're doing risk, buy this one, compliance, and so on. They are all the same price. They help you with 8 hours of consulting, which is more than enough to get you started with Aramba. And they will ensure that you do the right implementation. So you have very solid basis upon where to build your implementation. So again, we strongly advise you to purchase these as part of your purchase order. They're very useful, and they're gonna make sure that you do things the right way.